I'm gonna mute.
What's up, guys? I'm Brandon Baddock, and welcome to another episode of Disturbing the Priest. This episode, I'm joined with John Mcwatters, a very big Lou Reed fan, and I, a Metallica fan, are here to discuss the very debated Metallica and Lou Reed album, LULU. Before we get into it, I would like to thank my sponsor, Fake Bougie, for providing the flower this episode. They got some platinum mints right now, grown in Maine by a female grower named Ramona. The strain is a clean, smooth taste with a strong, relaxing buzz. If you need catering for your next private event or are interested in collaborating, reach out to at Fake Bougie Music. He also has a full tattoo studio, which is pretty sick. John, if you want that Lulu tattoo, this is the guy you hit up at Ink by Ferb with full tattoos starting at only $100. No hourly rate by tattoo, which is excellent. He also has a recording studio available if any of you are interested. Once again, if you'd like to reach out, that's at Fake Bougie Music at FAKEBOUJEEMUSIC. Hit him up. A lot of great stuff, providing the flower this episode. All right, John, you with us here?
I'm with you. What really surprises me is how many Metallica fans dislike Lulu. They finally got an old man Jason Newsted, back in the band.
He does look like Jason Newsted a little bit,
Yeah,
like the puffy hair.
yeah. No, they finally got him back.
They finally got him, and
Cliff
but
Burton, not
this
so
time,
much.
yeah, unfortunately not. But with it's funny because they really uh kind of like assaulted. We're not really assaulted, but like hazed. Jason Newsted. Like they really gave him like the worst of the worst treatment when he
Yeah,
joined Metallica. And it's funny because when Lou Reed came in, Lou Reed didn't mess around at all. He was taking nothing. And so maybe this is Jason Newsted getting a little revenge,
yeah. Maybe
you know?
Newsted paid him some money or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But I am very excited to do this episode. So you are a huge Lou Reed fan, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say the background of it particularly pertains to my father playing the 89 album New York, songs like Dirty Boulevard, Xmas in February, Straw Man, which is um, it was kind of like the stage of his I really don't give a fuck stage, and I'm going to
Yeah.
say the most. It's a very good precursor to Lulu.
Yeah, I feel like every Lou Reed album kind of just stands on their own. Like they're
Lou had
very
this
individualized.
he had this he had this thing, particularly with an album in '91, which was called Magic and the Lost, which is about um, the death of his friend, Doc Pormus, and then later on in that time, a few years later, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame with the Velvet Underground, and the surviving members did a song. I forgot the name of the song, but it was about Sterling, who was guitar player. John Cale was the bass player, kind of. The Velvet Underground's weird, but they
Mm,
did a song about him, and then it kind of like they did this progressing blues last 10 years of his career, doing an album dedicated to basically the Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. His lyrics and his just his own personality were became um, darker and more depraved and more facing um, his own views on how he is.
mm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it was
and then here we are, 2011
yeah.
with Lulu, um, which released on Vertigo. Its runtime's an hour and 27 minutes long,
Oh, it's worth it every second of it.
which is insane. Um,
I
Do you
think
you
it's the
think you think the hour 27 minutes is justified? Because I think it overstays its welcome a little
I
bit.
I think there are some songs off that album that if I could just have them do Junior's Dad and that Junior's Dad and Iced Honey as the two songs, and maybe
Yeah.
throw in side two of and um, Iced Honey and the first two songs, I think it would be great.
Hmm.
I think the runtime is justified because I feel this album is more of a 10 song album with very, very heavy religious undertones to it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think Lou Reed was ever trying to cram his. I don't think Lou Reed's always been political and he's always been very adamant on his songs and the underlying meanings of the songs. He wrote a song about heroin with the Velvet Underground. I mean, Waiting for the Man. It's all very it's all very directive and it's all very to the point. And then I think later with particularly the New York album, he had more message with under the meaning, um, particularly
Yeah. Yeah.
Straw Man or songs along those lines. He had a song about like Trump drowning in the ocean or something. It was fun time.
That's
Very, very,
amazing.
very. It stays pretty relevant now.
Yeah, and I guess like, you can kind of justify the runtime just because like again, it is like kind of send off album, which is again wild to say. Like it really blows my mind that this is a Lou Reed and a Metallica album. Um like it's so insane. I think it does overstay its welcome just because like I'll get into some of the songs in a little bit, but I don't know. I can't also help but notice like, and be aware of the backlash this record got. Um, Lou Reed talked about getting death threats from this. People would threaten to like shoot him in the face because of this record. He literally even stated like, "I guess I have no more fans," which is like really sad. And I do not like as a Metallica fan. And even if and I don't think this is a terrible album. I'll just say that I don't think this is a terrible album. But even if it was, I don't think anyone deserves death threats from you know, an album not being good. Like that, like, do I even have to say that? Like, it's really ridiculous because, yeah, Lou Reed has a lot of money or whatever. And it's like, I'm not gonna, but at the same time, he's still a human being. He's not just this god, this guy. He's a person and sending him death threats and shooting him in the face for having James go, I am the table is really ridiculous.
I
Um,
mean, if we're talking about just death threats within music industry on albums that people hated, Bob Dylan's a huge example when he went electric in the '60s.
yeah.
Um, that's that's one that people are like they basically called him Judas and they threatened to kill him. And there was another things with I'd say Dylan, but I think people getting the death threats were uncalled for. How fans on either side acted just borderline psychotic. I love the album.
Hmm.
I've always liked it. I think there's some relative content to a very solid farewell album and a very interesting way of how a band that I do respect a lot. And I think the one thing I will say about Metallica with this album is I got to give him a lot of credit because I don't think Dave Mustaine would have the balls to do something like this. Um, I think
Well,
I think it shows them that they went from this sellout perspective from the Black Album to something where they did something for I guess a mentor that they appreciated from that time period. So I think that's more of that. And yes,
yeah,
Dave Mustaine is
yeah.
a coward.
They oh, they all right. Well, first of all, um, I love Dave. Second of all,
I do
um,
too.
I think um this album is just a complete experiment, and it's just everyone just having fun doing this. So they met at a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame concert, I believe.
No, they met
And
before.
Did they?
They met in the '90s. There was a, a festival where they were both performing at, and I think they were wanting to do something together, and then years go on by and they do the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 25th anniversary concert, and Metallica did a set, and I think they had like a reunion of Simon and Garfunkel. CSN played together, but Lou played Sweet Jane with Metallica, and then they did this album together.
Mm,
So
wow. Yeah, and this album was like quite an interesting process. I heard like I believe 2/3 of this record was recorded in like less than a week or something. Like a lot of it was jamming because like Lou Reed had pre-written lyrics and
yeah,
then went to Metallica and they kind of just jammed and like I think a lot of the stuff is like one or two takes. Like like they would record it and they'd be like, all right, want to do another take? And Lou Reed would be like, well, I already just did it. It's done. I sang it already. That's a done song. So it was very like just like jam based and very just like a very old school in its recording process where it's like, hey, let's just, do it. And then boom, it's done. Hit the button, do it, and then it's out. Which I can respect that. Like I really do like that form of making music and whatnot. But I think if anything, it hurts this record. Um, I think this is a really unpolished album. I think there are so many elements of this record that could have been touched up and that could have been smoothed out a little more. A lot of it just seems like just it drags a little bit. And also like some of Lou Reed's vocals, like I'll get into that a little later, but some of them could have used another take, in my opinion. But other than that, like I think if this record was just polished up a little more, it would be a really, really great record. And I don't hate this record or love this record. I'm kind of in between. And like, you know, for this episode, I've been very back and forth because I used to really not like this record, and then I listened to it again. And I'm like, okay, I can't really look at it as like a Metallica record at all. Um, but I will say, like, that's my one big complaint with it, that it should have been touched up a little more. The fact that it was recorded mostly like 2/3 of it in like a week or whatever is just a little ridiculous. Um, Especially it being a hour and 30-minute record. But I don't know. The vocals on this album I think are very rough. Some of it reminds me of a really drunk guy at karaoke night where it is just like Jesus Christ. There's one song where he's singing um Pumping Blood, where he's singing where in the song Pumping Blood, where he's singing Pumping Blood he's actually singing it with the riff. And I think it sounds a little horrendous. I really like the stuff he does where it's very like where it's a lot of poetry and very spoken word. I think that fits over a lot of the elements of the instrumentals here, but like it's something like that part in Pumping Blood, I really cannot help but laugh every time I hear it. It's just maybe it just needed another take or something, but I don't know. That's
I
my
mean,
thoughts on that.
for me, since we're talking about Pumping Blood, I would say that's the weakest track on the album. It's the
Hmm.
one I don't. I mean, I'm gonna listen to it because I like it in hindsight, but in hindsight, if they ever decide to re-release it off iTunes or reissue the record, which I would buy immediately,
Me too.
um, I think it's respectively the weakest track on the album. I think I mean side one of the or disc one side one of the album is 39 minutes long and the other one's close to 50. I think Lou's voice is rough, but then again, he never really had the perfect singing voice. It was never kind of like your Robert Plant or your um, Roger Waters or Ozzy kind of level of screaming or vocal paralysis, or not paralysis, but perfection. It wasn't like the paralysis is Ozzy Osbourne now trying to sing.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say about this is, I think there's songs off this album that I truly truly love. I think Iced Honey is, which is the shortest track of the song. I kind of think it's I think it's kind of a
It's one of the
funny.
better ones.
I mean, if you put a like, though, there's these lyrics where you're just like, if you can't put a butterfly in a jar, if violence makes Mars your final hour,
Hmm.
if you make others feel like jam, pour a piece of charboiled lamb. I mean, it's utter nonsense, but like lyrically, it's dumb. But I think Lou's voice works in that, and I think it's, to me, it's I enjoy I enjoy it because Lulu, to me, reminds me in a lot of sense of Johnny Cash's couple final albums where he had
Mm.
Tom Petty as and the Heartbreakers as his backup band. I mean, I would say the Cash stuff was is more better vocals, and but it's kind of like this point where it's these two rock bands, and they're sitting with someone they look up to, and they put out these two pieces. Now I'm not comparing Johnny Cash to Lou Reed because there's my Texas card would be revoked. So, um, but what I'm saying about this album is, years down the line, or I think it was initially when it came out, or when it or after it was released, David Bowie called it Lou Reed's masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I think I can agree with that, because I think Junior's Dad is one of the best songs he wrote in since that New York album. Um, again, the lyrics are weird, but there's this poignancy to a I'm not going to be around for much longer. This is kind of my swan song. Years down the line, Bowie does his Black Star album, and he has his song Swan. Um, Dr. John had his later. People like Leonard Cohen, if you want it darker, which I know this isn't really metal artist, but we're talking about farewell
Yeah,
albums.
we are
Ones you,
talking about Lou Reed also.
yeah.
So
But
that makes sense.
what I'm saying with Lou is, I think Junior's dad is a emotional coaster, and it spells out his career, and it gives him a send off that he very much well deserved, compared to the latter two albums he did with like The Raven, which was weird. It was Lou Reed doing poetry based on The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. I think for me, Lulu is very flawed, but it's very enjoyable. You're thinking, what the fuck is he saying half the time, and then you give it like the first listen, you're like, what the fuck is this? And then the second or third time, you're like, okay, I get it. It's no near perfect, but I mean, he's singing about a gate in Germany. He's singing about
Yeah,
a,
well,
a yeah,
this is based on a German playwright, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So some of that, like, and you do have some weird vocal lines, but like again, like you were telling me, like Lou Reed is very famous for doing that. And after like really listening to this album, like I can definitely appreciate how almost like original some of his lyrics are. And I just want to build upon what you were saying with Junior Dad or whatever. I think it's definitely the best song on the record. If anything, the whole album should have sounded like Junior Dad.
yeah,
What really works with Junior Dad is the fact that you have Lou Reed doing almost like poetry, and you have very atmospheric metal in the background. That should have been the whole album. I think that would have been great if Lou Reed and Metallica, like if they just did something very atmospheric, and then you have occasional, chuggy, doomy riffs come in, and Lou Reed sings over them. I don't think thrash metal and Lou Reed works. I do think this atmospheric element of it definitely does. I think Junior Dad was a fantastic song, and like it really blew me away, especially after like listening to the rest of the album. Because I think I told you before, the first time I listened to Lulu, it took me 3 months because I
Yeah,
just could not get through this album. Uh, and then for this episode, I re-listened to it, and you were like, listen to Junior Dad, listen to Junior Dad. So I'm like, I'll get to it. I'll re-listen to it, and I'll get to it. And I looked at the time of it. I'm like, 20 minutes. It's like 15 to 20 minutes. Um, it's somewhere in that ballpark, and I'm like, all right. And it's fantastic. It should have been that should have been the whole album, like a song like that, where
that or sorry, go ahead.
you look at all good, where you look at songs like like we were just talking about, where he's kind of singing with the thrashy riffs, and it just doesn't work. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's great.
I think if Hentfeld weren't singing, and if it were just them as a backing group for Lou, I think that would have worked better. I think songs Junior's Dad, Iced Honey, Cheat on Me, Dragon, I really like. I think if it were
Mm.
more based around those latter songs of the album, I think, and Brandenburg's Gate works pretty well, but I think The View and Pumping Blood give it's a thrash metal with Lou Reed singing, and I think Lou Reed has had his punk phase or his glam rock days or his influence on just glam metal as a whole. I think Judas Priest probably looked at Lou Reed like that's a cool motherfucker right there,
Yeah.
or Alice Cooper along those lines. I think Lou has a influence on metal as a whole, but in a very more of a lyrical or poetry based way. I think Lou is has always had his poetry side to him. He was always out of his fucking mind, but he was always very, very to the point. I mean, if you see interviews with him, he's just a complete a hole. But
Yeah.
he, it's always that he's either messing with him or his. There's a brilliant thing that he does late towards the later end of his career, well before Lulu. He's doing like a song thing with Chris Christopherson, and they're trading off songs, and I'm talking about their work.
Wow, Chris Christopherson.
It's the two of them. It actually pairs
Wow.
better than it actually. It's a pretty weird pairing, but
That would I feel like that would work more than
because it's
this.
it's the it's the two of them trading off songs, and there's this point at the end where the interviewer guy says, "What songs do y'all want to? What songs do you want to cover?" And Christopherson covers "Bird on a Wire" by Leonard Cohen, and then Lou does "Track of My Tears." And it's like this very weird. It's like this very weird thing where they're trading off songs, and Chris is talking about songs that he liked from Lou, and Lou's talking about songs that he liked from Christopherson. It's this very, very, very cool album. But back to the point, I think this album for me, it's always in my back burner, and I'm like, do I like this album? Yes. Did I like it 3 years ago? Yes. When I heard it when it first came out, I'm like, what in the absolute shit am I listening to? And it honestly took me a while to get into it too. But I think when I finally listened to, I would say Iced Honey through Junior's Dad, I think I'm like, this is a really, really good album.
Yeah.
However, the first four songs, I'm trying to get into it. But when you get through the back half of the album, I get what Lou was trying to do. This was never a Lou Reed album or a Metallica album. This is Lulu. It's its own
100%.
it's its own brilliant clusterfuck.
Yeah, it's its own animal. It's its own
Yeah,
thing. I just like going back to James singing and Lou Reed. They definitely, their vocals do not match at all. They clash so much. Um, there's even a part where there's a I forget what song it is, but there's this part where Lou Reed goes, "Take it away, James," and James goes into like a riff or something. Like I wish I can remember what song it was. Um, but yeah, I just think their vocals clash a lot. I'll say this also. Junior Dad is the best Lou Reed song on the album, and I think The View is the best Metallica song on the album. I actually really like The View. I used to meme on it all the time, but like recently, like the da na 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 na, and then I am the room, I am the table. Like I think it's a funny line, but like I kind of jam out to it a little bit more after like listening to it a couple more times. Like I do really like the heaviness of that song, and it leaves more to be desired. I really wish Lou Reed, if anyone, paired with like Candlemass or like Sleep, Electric Wizard. That would have been way cooler, in my opinion, because you get these doomy riffs that are very easy to become atmospheric. They can easily go into something atmospheric. And I think that would be way better than, you know, the band that put out Master of Puppets. I really think it's a little strange, but I don't know. I think that would have been great. I do like The View. I think you told me that it was your least favorite song
Yeah.
on the album.
Well, at least favorite Pumping Blood.
Pumping Blood. What about
Yeah.
The View?
You know, so I was walking to pick up takeout one night, and I had the I had that song on, and I was listening to it, listening to it, listening to it. I think it's certainly the best Metallica track, and I think it's the I think it's the instance where the vocals of the two of them work well. I wouldn't say it's not the best, but I the one thing I wish from this album is I wish they were able to play this stuff live. I wish there was a tour with this because there was a show that they
Oh,
did in Germany.
imagine.
They did the show in Germany, and they did Ice Honey pumping. They did Ice Honey, The View, Dragon, some of and Junior's Dad and Ice Honey, and Ice Honey and Junior's Dad sounded fucking phenomenal live. There was a part
It
where this
did.
point where the entire band was in tears after they finished Junior's Dad, and then they go into White Light, White Heat.
Yeah, that was
And
cool.
what I think would have been phenomenal is them playing the old Velvet Underground songs with Lou Reed, because it very much worked when they did Sweet Jane at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And
Yeah.
I think if this were a tour and they're able to play it live, I definitely would have gone to that because it's fucking Lou Reed and
Me
Metallica.
too. Me
That
too.
would that would have been that would have been a phenomenally insane show.
That would have been a
And
very insane tour.
I think
Like,
I
how would
think
that
in
even
hindsight,
go?
oh, it would have been a stadium show, 100%. I don't think
You think
I
so? Like
it's
with the amount of like the Lulu tour?
I think it would have. I think people would have flocked in for it. I think it would have been. I think it would be a lot of the fans hating this, and then it would be probably 60% Lou Reed fans wanting to go see Lou Reed, and then a portion of Metallica fans wanting to go see Metallica, and then the other 10% like, what the hell do we get into? Because
It's so crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think, I don't think if this were toured, I think there would have been a different appreciation because I never saw. I was never old enough to see Lou Reed live, and I have the option to see Metallica in 2067 or whenever the hell they tour. It was 2024 now.
Yeah,
Right
whatever.
here.
2024.
Yeah,
But I don't
but
know, man.
yeah,
Like it's funny. You brought up earlier Dylan going electric and like people like seeing that very controversial. When Metallica put out Fade to Black, people were really like metalheads were really upset with that because it was Metallica like almost going acoustic. Um There's even people who believe that Metallica sold out when they put out Kill 'Em All, which is like really wild. So there's always going to be angry people, and you get the metal fans are like one of the easiest to upset. So a Lulu tour would have been would have been wild. I'd be afraid people would boo. Um, I don't know. I really have no clue how that would go. Um,
I think if they did it if they did it to the point where they would have done a Lou Reed set, a Metallica set, they play some songs together off Lulu. They play the Junior's Dad or some of the songs that people actually could tolerate. I think Junior's Dad would be phenomenal live. I think Ice Tiny would
yeah,
be great live. But I think it's where you see this point where it's the end of one man's career and Metallica's what they're in their 60s now, late
yeah,
50s. I think it's in 10 years or they've been in their 40s. So um, I think it's a very, very, very strong way for fans, particularly in America, to see Lou one last time. And then there's a bonus of you get to see them play Master Puppets or Enter Sandman or all the other Metallica songs that people like. So it's not to the point where it's a rowdy ass fist fight. I think it would be a hasta la vista for the farewell for some fans, and then the Metallica fans get this bonus seeing Metallica.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think
and
it
maybe
could be
Metallica would be able to cover some Velvet Underground songs
be
or
Sweet Jane
something.
or
You know,
Waiting for the Man.
yeah, yeah, like that. That would be really cool. I don't know. This album was kind of like it's definitely a reverse Black album, where people call the Black album like the sellout point, where Lulu is like the complete opposite, where they're just having fun, they're just jamming. It's just crazy how controversial this record was. Even the cover got banned in a couple places just because they thought the you know how it says like Lulu written in blood? They thought that promoted graffiti, which is insane. You know, it's really ridiculous. And I love how it took the Lou Reed album, Metallica album, for a Metallica album cover to get banned.
They had
Like,
their own
not
little
it took Lou Reed.
they had their own little butcher cover crisis.
Pretty much, pretty much. How do you feel about the like cover art of this one? I think it's kind of sick. I love it.
I like it. I think it's the most absurd thing cover art from either band or from either band or artist. I mean, Lou Reed's the guy that had Andy Warhol do his debut album with Velvet Underground, so it's very different art wise, and it's very different just imagery, and I mean, it's it's someone that's not really strained from controversy or strained from general dislike or from general not dislike but just from general being able to tick off the general population. I don't think
Yeah.
the your soccer mom Bible study group is particularly a big fan of Lou Reed or Metallica.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely meant to be taken just as Lulu and not as a Metallica album or a Lou Reed album. I kind of think this album is the death of Metallica, though. A lot of people say, oh, it's the Black Album. Oh, it's Load. I think Death Magnetic was like their last really, really good album. And this was the follow up to it. And I think this album was just so crazy and just so different. And it took this for Metallica to just completely, you know, like Hardwired came out after this and it was very just like, you know, let's just do like some dad rock metal songs. Um, God knows what their next one's going to sound like, but you know, I do think Lulu was kind of not just the death of Lou Reed, but of Metallica as well. Hopefully I'm wrong, and I do like some songs off Hardwired. But and Hardwired's a great album, but again, you compare it to the stuff off Death Magnetic, I don't think it holds up at all. I do think it's funny how Lou Reed kind of went in the studio to like record with them and really like put everyone in their place. Like there was one point when Kirk used like I think he accidentally stepped on the wah pedal or something, and Lou Reed goes in the mic and he just goes no. So it's like someone's finally saying it. It took Lou Reed to go in the
I mean,
studio.
there's also this thing where they were on the Howard Stern show, and Lars talked about. I think it was talking about him how he liked the album in the point where it really kind of pissed off like the extreme metalheads, and I think that kind of gave
Yeah,
the band a chuckle.
yeah.
Um, I think particularly I did a little research on the band, but I think James Hetfield, um, I think his father left when he was young, so I think
Hmm.
there was a point where the resignation of some of the songs, Junior's dad again, kind of was very good for the band. I think in hindsight with this album, if if none of it existed and we only kept the last song off the album, I think it would be very different for both bands' legacies. I think it's a phenomenal send off album. And I think for me it is the best Metallica album post their post their first four albums or um
Hmm.
post load or the Black Album. And I love Death Magnetic, and I think for me it's so obscure and it's so different and it's something we never expect from either of them. And I think why I like it is it shows that they can take they have a sense of humor about themselves. They're not taking them too seriously, like you know some douchebag from the Smiths. But um,
Exactly.
but I think in hindsight it's a good. I think from 10 years or 11 years now, I think people will appreciate it more than when it was released. I think it's slowly growing on people.
Yeah.
I think Lou Reed fans have always loved it. But I think there's an aspect of a just a solid, just a very interesting legacy from this album. I love it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's definitely flawed, and there's sometimes where I'm like listening to some of the songs like why the fuck is this a thing? Why did they choose this lyric or why they do this thing and why is he saying he wants to do something to a table?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't
So
know.
it's I
I think
think
it's a good
people
record.
yeah.
I think it's maybe an okay record. Again, I still have my issues with it, like you were saying. But I do predict that this is gonna have a Captain Beefheart effect. And like you were saying, in 30, 40 years, maybe even more, that people are gonna praise this album. I think Lou Reed fans way more than metalheads, but I think this is going to be a very, very appreciated album only in time, which sucks that, you know, the last Lou Reed heard from this album, it was all just backlash and trash and, death threats, which is wild to,
Well,
wild to think.
there was this thing a few years ago where Lou Reed's wife, um, his wife, um, his wife, Louis, one second, Laurie Anderson,
Mm.
um, she played her own stuff live, and then she played one of the songs off Lulu live. I think it was Junior's dad, and I think
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah. So I think it's people always see him as the guy from the Velvet Underground or the guy from Transform or Caroline Says or the New York album I was talking about earlier. But I think for me, Lulu is something that will age like wine better. I think more so for the Lou Reed fans, it'll age better than the metal fans, like you were mentioning. But I think
Yeah.
it's certainly something that, given time, I think like he was onto something. I think Bowie was right with calling it a brilliant album because
Mm.
I don't think we're at this point where it's his Master Puppets or his White Album or his Blonde on Blonde. I think it's to the point where it's something that we'll go back and listen to it again and be like, all right, he was onto something. But people, I wish he lived to see the change in opinion of it. I think people
Yeah.
are a lot less harsh to it now. I think the next thing that'll piss off Metallica fans is their new album or stuff
We'll
along that,
see.
or
We'll
their
see.
or the set list from their tours or whatever it is.
Yeah, who knows? Or Lars, or God knows. Metal fans could be very just like such elitists and gatekeepers. It's
Yeah,
really ridiculous. Um,
I mean, I don't think Newstead is a big fan of them at the moment.
yeah, dude, that's so funny because I did not make that connection that Newstead looked like Lou Reed. Like
Yeah,
especially the and like old Lou Reed,
yeah. Let's give Newstead another 10 years, and we'll have Lulu too with him coming back in the band again.
Yeah. Well, hey, do you have any closing thoughts on this record?
Um, I so my closing thoughts on it is I think for the songs we got, I enjoyed them a lot. I think well, songs we got, and then I think it's a very, very, very nice farewell to an artist that a lot of people like and a lot of people have respect for. Um, I wish both sides of the table um, were a little more respectful in the non death threat perspective of it. But I think in hindsight, it was the right album that was should have been released for his final project. I think it was a culmination of a career, a culmination of a very, very flawed human being with I guess with drugs and all the stuff that Lou went through and within his career. It amazes me that man made it to 71 years old. That is,
Honestly.
and it amazes me that Bowie and Iggy Pop both outlived him.
Yeah.
And Iggy Pop outlived them both. It amazes me how we had someone that was just the spirit of an entire goddamn city, and we had this weird weird ass album, but yet I wish there was more to it. I wish there was more of it. I wish were able to do another album. I wish Lou
Mm.
was able to live another 10 years and see the effect of his legacy and see how people liked him. He was inducted in 2015 to the Hall as a solo artist. Patti Smith inducted him.
Yeah.
I wish there was more. I wish he got the appreciation more from Transformer, Velvet Underground, which he very well deserves. But I wish
Hmm.
there was more in that sense. So that's my closing thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh my God, a Lulu too. Imagine.
Fucking
um,
great.
I don't know. Like my thoughts on this record is it's a Lou Reed album of all time.
Yeah.
It's a record. It's not crazy good. It's not crazy bad. It is a experiment. It is a complete experiment. It is almost like a farewell album too. Um, I will always have my issues with it. I don't think those will change. I wish Metallica was a little more experimental with it. I think two like these two sides weren't really seeing eye to eye at all. Because Lou Reed was really experimental and really all over the place. Where Metallica's like, all right, well, right, we'll put a riff there, we'll put a riff there, we'll put a riff there. Where I wish there were a little more like experimental themselves and a little more um atmospheric. But again, like this is 2011, like you know, you can't ask a lot. This is a crazy scenario on its own, so it's crazy that it even came out as good as it did, honestly. The vocals are rough on it, but again, this is old Lou Reed. But I don't know, man. I think this is quite an album. It was nice talking about it, discussing it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Uh we'll see if they ever put this on vinyl. It's crazy that this came out on Vertigo,
Yeah,
like out of all the labels, but I think the Black Album came out on Vertigo too, so I guess it's not too
yeah,
far fetched. But thanks for coming on.
yeah. Of
This has
course.
been a lot of fun. I'm Brandon Back, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.